AITA for feeling hurt after my daughter said at her party she'd be happier if I left her alone. My daughter Ava came into the world screaming at the top of her lungs and, in many ways, never really stopped. Her mother left when she was 9. She said she couldn't handle the weight of motherhood, as if it were a seasonal job she had been tricked into accepting. So I took over. I braided her hair with trembling fingers. I packed her school lunches with handwritten notes tucked inside. I attended every school play and soccer game, even when my body ached for sleep. I built my entire life around her needs, convinced that if I worked hard enough, if I gave enough, she would always know she could count on me. Today, I own a modest home construction company that I built from the ground up. It took years to get out of debt, then to reach stability, and finally, to enjoy a comfortable prosperity. I never flaunted my success. I wasn't a flashy person, but for Ava's 25th birthday, I decided to do something special. I bought her a brand new, pearlescent white Lexus, complete with a leather interior and every luxury feature imaginable. It wasn't just a gift. It was my way of saying, I see you. I am so proud of you, and I will always be here for you. I didn't realize at the time that it would be the last thing I would ever give her. She had become a woman I didn't quite recognize. Beautiful, intelligent, and confident, yes, but also cold in a way that felt foreign to me. Lately, she barely answered my calls, and when she did, our conversations were superficial. We hadn't had a real, meaningful talk in over a year, but I told myself it was normal for young adults. Distant, independent, I was the relic of a father she no longer knew how to deal with. That didn't stop me. I kept trying. The party was at her mother's house. That was my first mistake. I should have known better. But Ava insisted it would be easier there. She said it was neutral ground. How ironic that the woman who had abandoned us was now considered the neutral party. I arrived early, as I always do. I helped set up the tables. I brought the custom cake she didn't know I had paid for, and I parked the Lexus out front with a big red bow on the hood. Yes, it was a little cliché, but I imagined her face when she saw it. I imagined tears, or at least a hug that lasted longer than a few seconds. Instead, I got a performance. There were about 50 people there, friends, cousins, co-workers, people I didn't even recognize. She looked beautiful in her red dress, a glass of champagne in hand, laughing as if the world owed her nothing but joy. When she saw the car, her eyes widened for a split second, and in that moment, I saw a glimpse of the little girl I once knew. Then, it vanished. "Dad, you did not do this," she screamed, running toward me, as her friends were already recording on their phones. "This is insane. Who needs a Lexus? You're crazy. Just crazy." I smiled because that's what I had trained myself to do. I stood next to her while she showed off the car to her friends. I nodded while everyone complimented her on her good fortune. The attention she gave me was brief and feigned. I was just a prop in her Instagram story. Then came the toast. Someone tapped a glass, and suddenly Ava was on a makeshift stage, a microphone in her hand, flashing that same dazzling smile she had inherited from her mother. "I just want to thank everyone for coming," she said, her words slightly slurred from the champagne. "And a special thanks to my dad, who bought me this insane car. I mean, who does that? Only my dad, right?" The crowd laughed. I kept smiling, still clinging to a sliver of hope. "But honestly," she continued, pausing for dramatic effect, "the only way you could really make me happy is if you'd just leave me alone." The crowd erupted. Laughter, cheering, someone even whistled. She smiled, proud of her little punchline. I stood frozen. My smile remained fixed on my face, but inside, something shattered. She didn't look at me. Not a wink, not a mouth. It was just a joke. She just took another sip of champagne before passing the microphone to a friend. No one noticed when I left, not even her. I didn't slam the door, I didn't cause a scene. I simply walked away. One slow, deliberate step after another, past the buffet table, the chatting guests, the DJ booth, and out into the parking lot. The warm summer air didn't touch me. I felt detached, as if I were observing myself from a distance. I got into my old pickup truck, the one I used for work, and I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, motionless. Her voice echoed in my head. "Leave me alone." To her, it was a joke, a clever jab, but to me, it sounded like permission. Or perhaps, a challenge. I didn't cry that night. Instead, I sat staring straight ahead until the sky turned black and the party lights went out. No one came out to look for me. Not her, not her mother, not a single one of the people who had laughed. That's when I made the decision. It wasn't made with bitterness or even much emotion. It was just clear. The clearest thing I had felt in years. It was over. She wanted space. She would get it. She wanted freedom. I would give it to her. I was no longer going to finance my own humiliation. When I got home, I had already planned everything. The Lexus was still registered in my name. I had the spare key, and the GPS tracker was still active. I hadn't even transferred the insurance policy yet. I opened my laptop and made the first call to the dealership. They said they could send a tow truck in the morning. Next, I logged into my online banking portal. 2 accounts were frozen in less than 10 minutes. The joint checking account I had opened for her when she started college, and the credit card I had given her for emergencies, which had recently funded 2 trips to Miami and an absurd number of Uber rides. I didn't touch the balances. I wasn't stealing from her. I was simply closing the doors. Then came the condo. That one hurt. I had bought it 2 years ago when she said she wanted to move out, but couldn't afford the rent in a safe neighborhood. I had kept the deed in my name. Some instinct had told me to maintain that boundary, and now I was grateful for it. I called the property manager and gave 30 days notice. There would be new tenants at the end of the month. I would pay for her moving expenses and a storage unit. A final courtesy, but she would have to find a new place to live. I wasn't going to put her on the street, but I was going to make her responsible for herself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch in the dark, replaying every ignored sign, every look of disdain, every unanswered call, every sarcastic, "I love you too, Dad." I thought about her 6th grade talent show when she forgot the lyrics and ran off stage crying. I thought about the night of her 18th birthday when I gave her a scrapbook filled with every note, drawing, and school certificate I had ever kept. She had rolled her eyes that time, too. She said I was doing too much. Maybe it had always been this way. The next day was quiet. No calls, no text messages. Just silence. I imagined she was still recovering from her hangover, maybe still showing off the car to her followers. But by dusk, she must have noticed. The Lexus disappeared at noon, towed away without a trace. Her credit card was declined at a coffee shop. I know because the bank app sent me a possible fraud alert. And at 10 p.m., the first text arrived. "Dad, are you messing with my account? My card isn't working." I didn't answer. Another message followed. "Dad, seriously, what's going on?" I remained silent. She had asked for silence. I was simply giving it to her. The next morning, the phone call started. I didn't block her number. That would have felt petty. But I let every call go to voicemail. By the 3rd message, her tone had shifted from confused to annoyed. "What the hell is this? You can't just take everything away from me. This is crazy. You're acting crazy." That word again, crazy, as if I had lost my mind instead of finally finding it. But it was the 4th voicemail that truly stung. "Dad, please, it wasn't serious. I was just trying to be funny. Everyone was watching me. Please, call me. Please." I almost did it. My thumb hovered over her contact name, trembling. But then, I remembered her laugh, that cruel moment on stage, how she had used her wit as a weapon to get cheap applause. I had smiled while my soul was breaking in front of 50 people. No, this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, the culmination of years of silent disrespect. And finally, I had found the courage to name it. By the 3rd day, she was begging. Her tone had changed completely. The messages arrived like an avalanche, rushed, repentant, scared. "Dad, I didn't think you would actually do this. Please, don't cut me off. I don't know what to do. Please, Dad, I'm sorry." I looked at the screen with a heavy heart. The part of me that had raised her, the part that loved her despite everything, that part wavered. But the part of me that had been humiliated and worn down, that part remained firm. Finally, I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Dad." Her voice was broken and raspy, as if she hadn't slept. I exhaled slowly. "You said the only way for me to make you happy was to leave you alone." "It was a joke, Dad. It was stupid. I didn't mean it." "I know, but you said it in front of everyone. You made a fool of me." I was nervous. I didn't know what to say. "I'm not going to live like this anymore, Ava," I said, my voice steady and firm. "I gave you more than I should have, and you took it as if I owed it to you. Maybe that was my fault, but I'm not going to bleed myself dry anymore for someone who laughs while I do it." She was silent. I ended the call with a final sentence. Forget I exist. Live your life. That's what you wanted. I hung up. I didn't check my phone for the rest of the day. I left it face down on the kitchen table, screen off, vibrating occasionally like a dying heartbeat in the distance. I didn't want to hear her cry. I didn't want to read another excuse disguised as manipulation. I just wanted to sit with the silence, to let it spread through the house like steam, filling every corner that once echoed with her voice. This place had once been a shared home, even after she moved out. Now, it felt like a quiet museum, haunted by the ghosts of all the versions of us that never came to be. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. I spent the day cleaning, not out of habit or in expectation of visitors, but just to move, to do something with my hands. I scrubbed the countertops until the granite shined. I vacuumed under the couch, pulling out old popcorn kernels and forgotten receipts. I packed away the picture frames of Ava into boxes. Birthdays, her high school graduation, the one at the beach when she was 9 and missing her 2 front teeth. I didn't throw them away. I just put them out of sight, as if I were marking a boundary with glass and cardboard. I wasn't erasing her. I was just creating distance. The house was too quiet, so I turned on a classic rock station, keeping the volume low, and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee that tasted like burnt remorse. That's when the first real call came, not from Ava, but from her mother. "You are out of your mind," she screamed without so much as a hello. "Did you really take her car? You froze her accounts? What is wrong with you?" I gave her what she asked for, I answered calmly. "Oh, don't give me that. It was a joke." "A joke?" "No one was laughing with me," I replied. There was a moment of silence on her end. I could almost hear her mentally shuffling through her script for a response. "You're just trying to control her." I laughed then, not a loud or cruel laugh, just a tired exhale that tasted like the truth. I haven't had any control over Ava for years. That's the problem. You enable her, and you keep spoiling her. You always have. She is our daughter. She is a grown woman. And if this is who she has become, then I am no longer going to fund it. She hung up without another word. I stared at the phone as if it owed me a conclusion, but none came. Days passed in a blur. I stopped checking social media. I knew what I would find there. Posts fishing for pity, passive-aggressive quotes, probably a tearful selfie with a caption like, "When people show you who they are, believe them." I didn't need to see it to know. The pattern was predictable: public shame, private chaos, performative grief. She had the same dramatic flair as her mother. But beneath the spectacle, I wondered if she was truly beginning to feel the weight of her own decisions. By the 5th day, the calls stopped. Just silence. An entire day without a missed call or a message. I should have felt peaceful, but instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff after an avalanche. Calm, but unstable. I didn't doubt my actions, but that didn't mean they didn't hurt. That afternoon, I went to see my brother, Marcus. He lived on the other side of town in a modest ranch-style house with a swing on the porch and a garden full of wildflowers his wife planted every spring. He was always the level-headed one, less sentimental, more direct. "You look like you've been dragged behind a truck," he said, opening the door. I managed a weak smile. "That's about how I feel." We sat on his porch, beers in hand, as dusk settled over the neighborhood like a soft blanket. "She really said that in front of everyone?" he asked after I told him the story. I nodded, and she was smiling when she said it. Marcus took a long sip of his beer, then leaned back in his chair. "Yeah, that's cruel." He paused for a moment. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "It just took you long enough." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He gave me a look that cut straight through me. "You've been chasing her love for years, brother. Throwing money at a wound that needed honesty. You were finally honest. Good for you." I didn't know how to respond. A part of me wanted to argue, to justify every gift and every gesture, but I couldn't, because he was right. "It doesn't feel good," I murmured. "No," he agreed. "It never does. But sometimes peace feels like a loss at first. You just have to be brave enough to sit with it." We didn't talk much after that. We just sat in the growing dark, listening to the buzz of the cicadas in the distance. Two brothers, raised with different kinds of absence. I left his house feeling not lighter, but more resolved. When I got home, the light on my answering machine was blinking red. A new voicemail. I almost ignored it, but something told me to listen. "Dad," if you never want to talk to me again. I get it. But I just need you to know. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to be funny. I thought. I don't know what I thought. I messed up. I see now everything you did for me. I never said thank you enough. I never acted like I cared. But I did. I do. I just didn't know how to show it. Please don't give up on me completely. The line went dead. I didn't listen to it again. I didn't save it. I just deleted it. My thumb pressed the button as if it weighed 10 pounds. Then I stood there for a long time, staring at the silent phone. She wanted me to believe she had changed, that this was a moment of clarity, not strategy. But I had been burned too many times to walk back into the fire so quickly. Growth takes more than tears, it takes time. And she would have to walk that path alone. The reaction from others came quietly at first. A few sideways glances at church, some cold shoulders from people who used to ask me about Ava every Sunday. I heard conversations halt midway when I entered a room, their pity hanging in the air like smoke. They didn't know the whole story, of course. They never do. They just heard that I had taken my daughter's car, frozen her accounts, and given her an eviction notice. They heard I had abandoned her, and I saw the judgment on their faces. The unspoken question, what kind of father does that? I didn't bother to explain myself. I've learned that some people aren't looking for clarity. They're just looking for a reason to feel morally superior. Let them have it. I had nothing left to defend. But the phone calls, that's where the real battle began. My sister, Janice, was the first. You have to fix this, she said as soon as I answered. No hello, no how are you. There's nothing to fix. She's your daughter, Darren. You can't just cut off your own family like that. She cut me off first, I said. She just did it with a smile and a microphone. You're being petty. No, I said, my voice flat. I'm being clear. Janice didn't understand. Most people didn't. They still believed in the myth of unconditional parenthood, that no matter how many times you're disrespected, you must stay, give, and absorb it all, because that's what love is. But I was beginning to understand that real love has boundaries. That sometimes, truly loving someone means stepping back instead of swooping into the rescue. Then my niece, Serena, Janice's daughter, showed up one afternoon unannounced. She was 28 now, with a sharp gaze, the kind of person who can smell dishonesty from a mile away. I brought Thai food, she said, holding up a paper bag. And no, I'm not here to lecture you. I stepped aside and let her in. She set the food on the kitchen counter and started unpacking containers as if she owned the place. I know everyone's been on your case, she said between bites of pad thai. And I know you're probably tired of defending yourself. I'm not defending myself, I said. I'm ignoring them. She nodded. Good. Because you're not wrong. I raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? I thought you'd be on Ava's side. I was, she admitted, chewing slowly. Until I saw her crying on TikTok about how you dropped her overnight. I asked her straight up, what did you say at the party? And she told me, word for word. Serena shook her head. She thought it was funny. I think a part of her still does. Even now, she doesn't fully get why it hurts so much. It was humiliating, I said. I would have tolerated it in private. I would have even forgiven her if she'd come to me afterward. But she never did. Serena looked at me for a long moment. You didn't deserve that. But I have to ask, why now? Why not before? Why did you give so much for so long when she never really appreciated it? The question hung in the air between us. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes on the ceiling. Guilt, maybe. About her mom leaving. About me working all the time. I thought if I just gave her enough things, she would feel whole. Or maybe she would love me again like she did when she was little, when life was simple. She's not a child anymore. I know that. But a part of me still sees her that way. The little girl who would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who would squeeze my hand tight when she was scared. Serena reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Maybe it's time you stopped chasing that version of her and let the real her find her way to the real you. We sat in silence, the air thick with understanding. The next day, I ran into my old friend Lionel at the hardware store. He owns a plumbing business, and we'd worked on a few jobs together years ago. A solid guy. We hadn't spoken in months, but he saw me in the lighting aisle. Darren, he said with a nod. Heard about what happened? Yeah, I replied, bracing for judgment. But he surprised me. Just wanted to say, I get it, he said, his voice low. My own son stopped talking to me after I refused to keep paying his rent. Called me a traitor. We haven't spoken in a year. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. He shrugged. Sometimes, being a father means you have to be the bad guy in their story for a while. That sentence stuck with me for days. I started keeping a journal in the evenings. Nothing fancy, just notes and thoughts, trying to untangle the guilt from the growth. One night, I wrote, "It's not that I stopped loving her. It's that I started loving myself, too." And that's what it felt like. Like I was finally extending myself the same grace I had so freely given to everyone else. By the end of that week, Ava's social media went silent. No more vague posts or new photos. Either she had accepted the silence, or she was regrouping. I didn't know which, and I found that I didn't care. The damage was done, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the urgent need to fix it. I sat on my porch with a glass of whiskey and watched the sunset. No phone in sight, no emails to check. Just me, the breeze, and the slow, clear realization that grief isn't always hot and loud. Sometimes it's cold and quiet, but it is always honest. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked between bills and grocery store flyers in my mailbox. It was a single white envelope. My name was written on the front in a handwriting I hadn't seen in years, the same script she used before text messages replaced thank you notes. I stood on the porch for a long time, just looking at it, my thumb tracing the edge of the paper. It wasn't a text, not a voicemail, not a post begging for sympathy. It was a letter. From my daughter. I didn't open it right away. I placed it on the kitchen counter and walked away from it. I made coffee, folded a load of laundry, pretending my hands weren't itching to tear it open. But finally, as the house settled into its usual afternoon quiet, I sat down at the table, switched on the small desk lamp, and unfolded the single sheet of paper. Her handwriting was messy, rushed. It didn't feel performative, it felt raw. "Dad, I don't know how to start this, except to say I'm sorry. Not the way I said it on the phone, not the way people say it when they want something. This time, I mean it. I was cruel. I thought I was being funny, and I wasn't. I knew it the second I saw your face, but I was too proud to admit it. And I hate that about myself. You were always there for me. You gave me everything. Things I didn't deserve, things I never thanked you for. I got used to you fixing everything, showing up, forgiving me without ever asking me to grow up. When you finally stopped, something inside me broke. I know I deserve this, but it still hurts. I'm not asking you to give me back the car, or the condo, or the money. I just want to know if maybe, one day, we can talk again. When you're ready. I love you. Even if I was never very good at showing it. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Ava." I read it once, then a second and a third time. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with the weight of her words, with their honesty and humility. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real. And for the first time in weeks, the anger that had been pressed against my ribs began to dissolve. All that was left was a deep, slow sadness for the time we had lost. I left the letter on the table, leaned back in my chair, and looked out the window. My mind flooded with memories. Her small hand in mine on the first day of kindergarten, her shouting at 13 that I didn't understand anything, her silent, grateful hug when I paid off her last student loan. The roller coaster of raising her, beautiful and exhausting, full of turns I never saw coming. I didn't call her. I didn't write back. Not because I was still angry, but because true change needs time to take root. Letters are just words until actions give them meaning. I wasn't going to throw my doors wide open just because she had opened her heart for a moment. But I could honor the gesture without reopening the wound. That same week, I went to the DMV. I signed over the title to her old 2011 Honda Civic, the car she drove in college. I'd kept it all these years in the garage. It needed new tires and a battery, but it was a solid, reliable car. Unpretentious. It felt appropriate, a symbol of responsibility, of earning what you have. I didn't include a note, no message, no guilt trip. I just put the keys and the signed title in a padded envelope and mailed it to the new address her mother gave me when I called to ask where she was living. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. A small door left ajar. I hoped she would text when she received it, maybe to say thank you, maybe even to ask why. But days passed, and then a week, and there was nothing. No message, no call, just silence. And strangely, that silence didn't hurt. It felt mature, as if she understood that this wasn't her time to speak, but mine to heal. I started spending more time outside. I took long walks in the mornings. I joined a local chess club. Nothing fancy, Just a group of old guys in baseball caps talking trash over worn-out chessboards. One of them, Gary, asked me if I had kids. I paused for a second before answering. Yes, a daughter. Are you too close? He asked. I thought about it. We were. Then we weren't. And now, maybe we're figuring it out. He just nodded, as if that made all the sense in the world. One night, while organizing tools in my garage, I found the birthday card I had bought for her before the party. It was still in the glove compartment of my truck. Sealed, written, forgotten. I opened it. Inside, I had written, "No matter how far we drift, you will always be my daughter. Love, Dad." I stared at those words and knew they were still true. But feeling something doesn't mean you have to surrender your peace for it. It means holding space, creating distance with dignity, and letting love exist without letting it consume you. I put the card back in its envelope and tucked it away in a drawer. Not to give to her, but just to keep. A reminder that love doesn't always come with a reunion. Sometimes, it just comes with clarity. The silence stopped stinging with time. It softened into something almost comfortable, like an old sweater you only wear at home. I didn't know if Ava would write again. I didn't know if I would open another letter if she did. But I knew this. I didn't need to hear from her to find closure. I didn't need a tearful reunion or a movie-style redemption to know I had made the right decision. Sometimes, all a man needs is his own peace. I had spent so many years reacting, fixing, financing, and forgiving that it took a real effort to simply exist in my own skin, without needing someone else to validate my worth. That was the hardest part, really. Realizing how much of my identity had been tied to being her provider, her protector, her safety net. Without that role, I had to rediscover who I was when no one was watching, when no one needed to be saved. Mornings became a ritual. Coffee at 6 a.m., newspaper in hand, the radio playing softly in the background. I started cooking for myself again. Simple things, but things I enjoyed. I even took up woodworking in the garage. I built a small bench, a planter box, a coat rack. It didn't matter if the corners weren't perfect. They were mine. My hands, my effort, my life. One afternoon, I walked past Ava's old room. I stopped in the doorway. The boy band posters on the wall were faded, her bookshelf half empty. I thought about clearing it all out, painting the walls, turning it into an office. But I couldn't. Not because I was hoping she'd return, but because that room reminded me of where we started. Before things got complicated, before money became a substitute for affection, before silence became our default language. It reminded me that we had once been close, that it hadn't all been bad. She made her choices, and I made mine. But the love didn't just disappear. It just changed shape. Serena came by a few weeks later with a box of donuts and her usual observant smirk. "You look settled," she said. "Don't sound so surprised." She sat on the porch swing. "She's working part-time at a coffee shop, living with a friend. She said she's just trying to get on her feet." "That's good," I said, my voice neutral. "She hasn't contacted you?" I shook my head. "Would you want her to?" I took a sip of my coffee and really thought about it. What would I say if Ava showed up tomorrow, suitcase in hand? "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I would need her to show up different. Not perfect, not even polite. Just honest. And ready to do the work." Serena nodded. "She says she's trying to become the kind of person she should have been all along." I didn't reply, because hope is a quiet thing. You don't say it out loud, or it might vanish. Later that night, I went out to the backyard. I lit a small fire in the fire pit and watched the flames consume the dry wood. The stars were out, sharp and indifferent. I reached into my wallet and pulled out the old, folded photo I always carry. Ava, 5 years old, with birthday cake frosting on her cheek, laughing a pure, uncalculated laugh. Before she learned sarcasm, and before I learned that love can't buy loyalty, I murmured, "I still love you, kid." Not to her, but to the memory. To the version I raised, not the one I lost. And maybe, just maybe, to the one who was still out there, trying to find her way back. But I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't write another letter. I didn't ask Serena to pass along a message. Because part of being a father, maybe the hardest part, is knowing when to let go. Not as a punishment, but out of respect. For her path, for my own, and for the space we both desperately needed to finally grow. If Ava came back one day, I would listen. But I wouldn't beg. And if she didn't, I would be okay. I had found my peace in the silence. Not because I had stopped loving her, but because I had finally started loving myself, too. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest way to love someone. Comment. Reading this story made me think about how much we give to others, often at the expense of ourselves. It is easy to confuse unconditional love with a lack of boundaries, but true love actually requires them. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is step back and reclaim your dignity. Allowing someone to face the consequences of their actions isn't about punishment. It is about giving them the space to grow. You deserve a life where your peace is prioritized over managing someone else's chaos. Remember that saying no to disrespect is actually saying yes to your mental health. Don't let guilt keep you trapped in a situation that drains your spirit. Healing doesn't always look like a happy reunion. Sometimes it looks like finding comfort in your own company. We often lose ourselves in the roles we play for others, but it is never too late to rediscover who you are on your own. I hope this reminds you that your well-being matters just as much as the people you care for. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.